The economic data we saw today, the weakest economic growth rate, apart from COVID, since the 1991 recession. The latest figures show GDP only grew by 0.1% in the first quarter of the year. Joining me now, tonight's political panel, Labor MP Andrew Charlton and National Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie. Andrew, Bridget, welcome to you both. Look, Andrew, we've avoided a technical recession so far, but there is a per capita recession for ordinary Australians. How tough is it at the moment, and what else does this data tell us?
Well, you're right, Shari. Per capita GDP growth has been low in Australia, and it was low again this quarter. But I think it's important to remember about per capita GDP that it is quite a volatile series. And countries right around the world have been struggling with low per capita GDP growth since before COVID. If you compare Australia to other peer countries over that time frame, Australia actually does much better on a per capita GDP basis than Britain, than Japan, than New Zealand, than Canada, than the Euro area. So I think those per capita numbers do speak to the struggle that many families are experiencing at the moment, but it's certainly not a problem unique to Australia or unique to this time. More broadly on the economic numbers, I think it shows that the government has its fiscal settings right. You know, we received a lot of criticism around the budget, that we hadn't cut enough, that the budget surplus wasn't big enough, that we should have gone further. Well, now we can see that since the economy is as weak as it is, it actually would have been a terrible mistake to take that advice. And instead, the government, with a modest, prudent surplus, got the balance right between bringing down inflation and making sure that we didn't push the economy under.
Bridget, what do you think? Do you think the economic data today shows that the government did get the settings right in the budget?
Well, I think we've got anaemic growth at the moment. We heard from the Reserve Bank Governor today in Senate estimates, who made it very, very clear that she wasn't looking at bringing interest rates down anytime soon, which means for wage earners and mortgage holders in Australia, they're still going to feel the pinch for a long, long time to come. And the reason is because we know inflation is now homegrown by this government's record spending, 27.6% of GDP, highest on record, even the peaks through COVID, which means there is no incentive for the Reserve Bank governor to actually put downward pressure on interest rates. And that's the thing that's really killing everyday Australians in our suburbs and regional capitals. And if you, like everything else is indexed. Your pensions indexed, youth allowances indexed, etc. All these other government payments are indexed. The only people that aren't getting indexed relief here in the face of inflation are wage earners and mortgage holders, and the government needs to get its spending under control instead of flooding the economy with money, which is exactly what they've been doing. And I did note that there were Labor senators today seeking to shame and blame shift the woes of our economy onto the shoulders of Michelle Bullock from the Reserve Bank. She wasn't having any of it. She's not going to be making political decisions on interest rates to suit Jim Chalmers.
Shari, if I could just jump in there. You know, it's great to be back on the show with Bridget, but what she just said is really confused. On the one hand, she's saying that the economy is really weak, that we've got anaemic growth, was the words that she used.
0.1.
But on the other hand, she's saying that Labor's got a big spending budget and can't control the spending. So is she suggesting that we should be spending less? And is she willing to cop the consequences of what that would mean for a country in anaemic growth? She's really
Andrew,
trying to have it both ways. She's trying to say that we should be spending less.
Bridget,
patronising commentary.
Let's get Bridget's response to this.
The only lever that is actually left is to see a rise in unemployment. So the strategy actually underlying the Labor Party at the moment is that they're hoping, and their policies will actually result in people losing their jobs to actually ensure that the fiscal settings work in a way that will bring interest rates down quicker than I think Michelle Bullock would be planning to do so. And it's not me. It's the economists.
All right, let's move on to another topic. Defence Ministers Richard Marles and his junior Matt Keogh seem to have some struggles today, put it that way, keeping their story straight. There were mixed messages on which foreign residents would soon be able to join the Australian Defence Force. Let's have a look.
Well, in terms of who we're focusing on, we've really articulated that. New Zealand, Five Eyes, the Pacific, but what we're focusing on is New Zealand, Five Eyes and the Pacific.
The 1st of January 2025, it'll apply to other Five Eyes countries and permanent residents from any other countries.
Many other countries. Andrew Charlton, instead of allowing foreigners to join the ADF, why not do a better job at improving the organisation so that it appeals to young Australians?
Well, I think we have to do that as well, Shari. You know, for the last 9 years, the recruitment into the ADF has not been where it needs to be. And that has left us with some capability gaps that we need to be acting to fill. And that means making sure that joining the armed forces is an attractive proposition for young Australians, that they are supported, trained, and given career pathways through the armed forces. That means that we can attract the best young people in to defend this country. And what the Defence Minister is saying is now we're also looking at options to use people who have been in Australia for a long time, from New Zealand, from other like-minded countries, and not preventing those people from joining the armed forces if they meet the criteria that are set out for them.
Bridget, do you agree with the proposal to allow like-minded countries, America, New Zealand, Canada, other Five Eyes nations, to join our ADF?
Well, I think the Australian citizenry is the most precious gift that you can give somebody. We should all be prepared to do everything in our power to defend our country, and we need to make sure the Defence Force, to Andrew's point, and I agree with him on this, is that the selection criteria needs to be broad enough to make sure that more young Australians not only see it as an attractive career, but also you can get in. We got evidence in Senate estimates an hour or two ago where finally you're going to let people who have braces, who've had braces into the Defence Force, etc. So removing some of those barriers, I think, is good. But at the end of the day, Shari, we're not the Foreign Legion. I don't think we need to be bringing in non-Australians to help us defend our own. We need to make sure the ADF is fit for purpose and employing Australian citizens.
Now, just before we go, we've seen elections in India. Look, this is an area of foreign policy that you follow particularly closely. Andrew Charlton, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will now have to rely on coalition partners, it's been reported, to form government. Are you surprised, Andrew, by this result?
Look, I think the results certainly defied the exit polls and they defied many people's predictions. You've got to remember that an Indian election is really a marvel of logistics. It takes many weeks. There are nearly 1 billion people who are eligible voters. And I think for me, one thing that this result shows, which was much closer than people predicted, it certainly wasn't the walkover by Prime Minister Modi that had been expected in some quarters. It shows that Indian democracy is alive and well. They have a strongly contested democracy, vigorous political parties, and an election process which was free of claims of fraud or interference and has delivered a return of the Modi government, albeit with a smaller majority.
Now, apart from an economic textbook, you've actually written a book on India, Andrew, haven't you?
That's right. Yeah, I wrote a book about Australia's engagement with India and the importance of that relationship to Australia in the future. Yeah. The point of the book is that I don't think there are many other nations in the world that will shape Australia's future as much as India. It is the largest country in the world by population. It is about to become the 3rd largest economy in the world. It has the fastest growing military capability, and it's on track to become a full-blown superpower that will shape our region and Australia within it.
And unlike other superpowers, it's actually a democracy, which I think is super exciting. And I think Modi's whole vision to make India a developed country by its independence centenary in 2047, I think, is something the Indian public want to see achieved.
Bridget and I agree completely, very strongly on that.
For once, Andrew Charlton, Bridget McKenzie, thank you both so much for your time.